Memories. Sexy, thick venom. It's no secret by now that the so-called AAA industry is all in on socially charged gaming experiences. The unsustainably saturated live service marketplace that has given us such award-winning triumphs in excellence as Anthem, Fallout 76 and The Culling 2 has brought with it the expectation that we're not supposed to just enjoy and play video games on our own. And as for playing any of this shit offline, you're having a laugh. Fincher. We're supposed to enjoy them with other people around the world, constantly connected, whether we like people or not. People have been playing video games with and against each other for decades, of course. The concept of multiplayer is nothing new, but we're beyond simple multiplayer these days. We're expected to interact with each other on more casual, albeit more pervasive and complex levels. The rise of social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook means we're more connected than ever, more exposed to each other's bullshit, and video games want a slice of that action. If you were to ask Electronic Arts CEO Andrew Wilson about it, it's something we're all begging for. In a so-called candid interview with the uncannily robotic executive, Wilson justified his company's push toward more social experiences as something the market demands, and he pushes this angle hard. The word social comes up no less than 9 times in the interview as Android Wilson deploys his narrative. Once you get to the point where social interaction is really important, then you discover that network effect in the context of games is as important as it is for Facebook or Snapchat or Twitter or any of these other social grounds, he said. Once you come to terms with that, what you understand is that people will come together to consume this content together, and they will want to stay and continue to consume that content and fuel those relationships as part of that. The reality is that is going to mean games as service is going to be foundational to our industry, because that is how you will fulfill the motivations of players who have social interaction at the very core of why many of them play games for much of the time they play. Wilson is saying social networking is just as important in a video game as it is on Facebook, which is one hell of a bold take. Now, there seems to be no real evidence for his belief that it's that important.
Outside of financial reasons, but we'll get to that.
He just states it like it's a given, a fact, something we've all already accepted. Personally, I'd love to know who he asked to reach this conclusion, a conclusion he's already treating as something obvious, something irrefutable, something we've all got to acknowledge. I'd love to know which video game players are going around saying, I really love Fallout, but I wish it were more like Twitter. Actually, I'd love to meet anyone who wishes something was more like fucking Twitter. I've certainly never been asked, and frankly, if I were, I'd answer with a resounding fuck no. Fuck no. Do I need exposure to more human beings when I decide to play a video game? If anything, the existence of Twitter and Facebook should be an argument for less social interaction in our escapist entertainment, where the key word is escape. I'd much rather get lost in my own solo experience after dealing with fucking people all day long. We've got social interaction coming at our asses, and it's becoming more and more evident through the prevalence of social networking and the horror it brings that the biggest mistake humanity ever made was getting to know itself better. I expect Wilson and game industry executives like him to increasingly lean on the idea that we, the people, demand more social interactions in our games. In a recent interview, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot beamed about how tech advancements for game hardware offer more intelligent game worlds with deeper systems, the ability to play with more friends, and have more social interactions. Woohoo! Similar to the ways in which the industry pushed the whole single-player games are dead bullshit, the industry is going to work overtime to sell this idea that video games must be, in their own twisted way, social media platforms. And while there is and always will be plenty of room in the marketplace for social interaction, multiplayer, and live service games, I fully believe there's a reason why cyborgs like Andrew Wilson are yelling the word social at any given opportunity, normalizing the idea that it's an expected feature of pretty much every mainstream game churned out. The reason is, of course, money. More specifically, money from so-called whales, the customers prized by game makers for their willingness to spend large amounts of money on in-game purchases. Yep, it all comes down once again to flogging microtransactions, and if we take a look at a little talk given by Jussi Laakkonen? Jussi? Metal Gear? Anyway, if you take a look at this talk, it'll show exactly why publishers are so interested in social networking.
About the money curve on how you make revenue on free-to-play games. You got non-payers, you got moderate payers, you got heavy payers, and you got even what we call super whales. What makes these people tick, and how do you attract them, the people who spend money? How do whales find your game? What is engagement to these people? What makes them tick? And how do they share? So primarily trying to complete the loop. How do these people find, how do they get stuck, and how do they bring more people into a game?
How do they get stuck? Something tells me that wasn't the optimal choice of word, and yet it reveals so much. In a prior video, we looked at how addiction-based gameplay is allowing the game industry to make money from vulnerable players. And we looked at a gloating presentation given by a mobile studio CEO, Torolf Jernström, who explained in shocking and disgusting detail how in-game purchases psychologically trick people into spending money. Laakkonen's talk, titled Getting Inside the Heads of F2P Players Who Spend $50 a Month, is less despicable in comparison, but it's nonetheless an eye-opener in relation to this push for social networking that we've seen in games. The talk broadens the concept of whales to differentiate between heavy spenders who spend around $10 a month on a game and what Laakkonen calls super whales, the most desirable sort who can be expected to spend upwards of $50 a month.
How does social play into this? Because in our survey, we're primarily interested in how does social affect whales. And there's not a huge amount of difference when we think about this. Social features are important for everybody. We didn't see a huge differential when we added into the heavy payers and the super whales. But fundamentally, what's interesting is we think about whales being somehow psychologically sick people who just play alone and they don't have any life. They're clearly more interested into getting involved in the social features. The social features help in retention. It reinforces that when you go into the game and start spending money, you want to engage with other people. This is really interesting. Making new in-game friends, in-game chatting, and responding to challenges, and these things are really standing out. So if in the last slide, everybody was roughly equal on the social spectrum, slightly more for the super whales. Then when we started really looking into specific features, the super whales are really starting to stand apart.
Here, the whale hunter discusses that social networking is something whales of all stripes love. He also tries to push back on the idea that whale hunting is problematic and targets the psychologically vulnerable because whales have friends, which isn't really a justification. Many problem gamblers and shopping addicts have friends. In fact, social media addiction is itself a thing. Just being social doesn't mean you can't be unethically targeted by predatory monetization, but I digress. The point is, social interaction isn't so attractive to the industry because we're all necessarily demanding it, but it's sure as hell important to the industry because the whales seemingly like it. And as always, I'd like to take a moment just to point out how dehumanizing I think the term whales is. I'm just surprised that the industry hasn't dropped the veil over its contempt and just started calling them cattle.
Whether it be things like Clash of Clans providing clan system where you can buddy up with other people, or with your existing friends, or maybe the new MOBA type of games that are coming along, they're all tapping into this feature which are about playing together or playing against somebody. And to me, that's something, if you're working towards a free-to-play game that really you have to think about whales. I think you really need to start thinking about social as a key driver for these people.
If we look at the mobile game industry as a testing ground for monetization that makes its way to AAA video games as it seems to be, then it's not hard to see why Android Wilson has such a massive fuck-off boner for social gaming right now. This talk, where super whales were named as retained and driven by social interaction, was delivered in 2014, not too long before mainstream companies jumped aboard the live service bandwagon in droves. Games like Clash of Clans have long been an obsession for big budget game publishers who see the mountains of cash they make and want to replicate that financial decadence for themselves. In fact, it was in 2014 that I published a video titled The Unholy Trinity of Blind Greedy Bastards, where I discussed how game publishers only see and care about 3 games: Call of Duty, Candy Crush, and of course, Clash of Clans. I learned this from talks with folks within the industry, and in the years since I published it, it's only become more and more clear that these games are indeed the most influential games of their time for all the wrong reasons. Incidentally, Clash of Clans is one of several games mentioned in a recent BBC report about kids being tricked into spending hundreds and thousands of pounds of their parents' money on video games aimed specifically at children. And also, totally incidentally, we're seeing ever more so-called AAA games doing the same thing, especially FIFA, which is rated as suitable for kids aged 3 and up, yet thanks to in-game gambling now needs more parental supervision than fucking Doom ever did. Social networking also brings with it social pressure. For many years, people have argued microtransactions and loot boxes are okay if the items are just cosmetic, and I've pushed back against that defense the whole time. Cosmetics are particularly insidious because they create a haves and have-nots economy where people are pressured into spending to keep up with their friends. Quite a few people called me an idiot for arguing this back in the day, but now we're in an age where kids at school are being bullied for not having any premium skins in Fortnite, where default has become a derogatory term for those who don't spend on in-game items. And all this time, men like Torolf Jernstrom were explicitly instructing developers on how to use peer pressure to their financial advantage.
We are herd animals, we tend to do what all of the others do. You all sit quiet listening to me because that's what all of the other guys do here. So, especially when people are similar to us. This means that you should have the socially accepted way of behaving in your game should be paying. You want to tell people, for instance, when a clan member of theirs spend IAP money, you want the whole clan to know, because then that becomes the socially acceptable way of behaving. You absolutely do not want to tell them that the majority of people in your game never spend money. That's poison. Never tell them that.
Yeah, who's the fucking idiot now? Of course, the ability for social interaction to coax money out of people is a fairly old concept. It's how some of the most evil names in the game industry got their start. In 2009, 10 years ago, Farmville arrived to ruin the world. A seductively addictive farm management sim, much of what microtransaction-fueled games are known for were popularized, maybe not invented, but entirely popularized by Zynga's Facebook-based agriculture em-up. Premium currencies, frustrating wait periods on activities, purchasable items. It was a classic free-to-play structure that would mutate into the fucked-up addiction-based economies that now rake in billions and billions of dollars for companies like EA and Activision. And of course, Farmville was inherently social in its structure, being housed most famously on Facebook, and utilizing Facebook's own features to spread knowledge of the game to everyone on the network. Players were encouraged to spam their friends with requests and would gain rewards for helping each other out. It kept people playing, it had them keeping up with each other, and naturally, it made a shit ton of cash in the process. At its peak, Farmville boasted 83.76 million active users a month, and while its popularity declined sharply after 2011, the legacy it left behind, the lessons it taught the industry, are stronger than ever. Its addictive gameplay loop of repetitive busywork and chores has been replicated thousands of times over in the intervening decade, taken to new peaks of audacity with mindlessly cyclical premium games like Anthem, which unmistakably share huge amounts of DNA with Farmville. Many, if not most, of these modern live service games are just Farmville writ large. They might have combat added in, more shit to do, and a bit of narrative draped around it, but the philosophy is the same. When microtransactions came to Dead Space 3, Visceral's John Calhoun notoriously tried to justify them by saying mobile gamers expected them, so they were added to the distinctly non-mobile game. There's a lot of players out there, especially players coming from mobile games, who are accustomed to microtransactions, Calhoun told CVG. They're like, I need this now, I want this now. They need instant gratification, so we included that option in order to attract those players, so that if they're 5,000 tungsten short of this upgrade, they can have it. Ironically, as we all know, EA CEO Android Wilson needs tungsten to live. At the time, this statement from an EA thrall was mocked and laughed at. Why on earth would you put something in there for mobile players who are called mobile players because they play on fucking mobile systems? Looking back, however, and seeing how insidiously woven into the fabric of the market microtransactions have become, what Calhoun says now takes on a darker tone. It was a portent of things to come, as well as a candid glimpse into what these executives were thinking. Because in the context of today's market, perhaps what he said wasn't all that stupid. I mean, they got what they wanted, didn't they? They wanted to emulate the avaricious economies of mobile games where knee-jerk purchases, addictive spending, and social pressure make billions. So they did. They did copy these things. You wouldn't see them be that blunt about it these days, but back then, what Calhoun said was a bit of honesty. They were just copying the successful shit they saw in mobile games to make money. Naturally, this honesty is still dressed up in a bunch of insincere bullshit, but the nucleus of truth is plain as day. Calhoun, way back in 2013, the year of Luigi, outlined exactly, how they expected to make money by frustrating players and exploiting their frayed patience. I need this now. I want this now, he says. I need this now. I want this now. I shouldn't have laughed at that mobile player's line back in 2013, because right now in 2019 it's not a joke, it's just the way things are. And while all this is going on, we have mobile game executives delivering their little presentations about how you should trick players into spending for instant gratification, how peer pressure should be used to make spending the socially acceptable norm, and how these super whales love social interactivity more than anyone else. Just like when the game industry told you that you don't like linear, story-driven, single-player games, the game industry wants to tell you that you want all your games to be social, that it's as important to your experience in a game as it is to Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. And it's a crock of shit. Social gaming has its place, but its mass adoption by the AAA game industry is a fucking scam. A long con. Yet another way, on top of the by now absurd number of ways in which video game publishers plan to swindle, trick, and seduce cash out of you. And just to reiterate the most important aspect, I don't like people. Who fucking does? As we firmly established over the years, game publishers don't produce things simply because people want them. Obviously they do things there's a market for, but the sole reason, the primary reason, is not because people want stuff. If they produced things just because people wanted them, there wouldn't be so many Kickstarters for things people want. No. They do things because they sense an opportunity to make extreme amounts of money. Not just a good amount of money, a moderate amount of money, even an impressive amount of money. As we have talked about for many years on this show, game publishers don't just want money, they want all of the money in the world. That's why we can't just have whales anymore for these people. They don't just have whales, they have their heavy spenders and their super whales, because they've hit the limit, I guess, on just focusing on all of the whales. Now they need to find out how to finely tune themselves to get their psychological hooks in people who are even more willing to spend money than the people who are already willing to spend loads of money. There is no end to what they do. There is no limit to what they want. That's why monetization has gotten worse and worse and worse. And I've asked on this show before, where does it end? Where does it end when we have a game coming out and we have a game with multiple deluxe editions, silver editions, gold editions, half a dozen different collector's editions, microtransactions, season passes, sponsored tie-ins with energy drinks, and of course loot boxes as an evolution of the microtransactions, because simply making perpetual money off people wasn't enough. While multiplayer and social networking even in games does have a place, it's becoming quite clear that these things are mass adopted not because they have a place, but because they can be used to displace what video games are in order to trick and swindle more and more money out of people. This whole social networking approach to video games, while not widely adopted, while not so deeply baked into games yet, it's something I think is coming. It's something these publishers definitely are keeping their eye on. When you have Andrew Wilson saying that social networking is just as important in games as it is on actual social media platforms, you can sort of smell where the wind is blowing. And yes, I meant to say smell which way the wind is blowing, because the moment the wind blows in your direction, you can just pick up the hint of shit from the horizon. Because that's what big, massive game publishers are doing right now. Shit. Utter, outright shit. Anyway, thank you to the people in Alabama who came out, Jimquisition fans who came out to the Piedmont show in Alabama, where Sterling appeared for Pro South Wrestling. If you're in Pittsburgh, August 3rd at the Rise Stronghold. Why not come and check it out? It'll probably maybe be good. And you can all, whether you're there or not, thank God for me. Wouldn't that be nice for you, Goddamn thick venom.